Great. Well, welcome again, parents. It's so good. I know we are not literally seeing you at this moment. We're just seeing black boxes, but the important thing is that we're together here tonight. I'm very, very excited to have Sarah Primsey back with us. And if you were with us, Sarah, was it back in February now? A couple months ago? Time kind of flies. I know, had a lot going on for us as a school, and I know in Sarah's life as well, but we're happy to have her back. She spoke with us on cultivating courage last time and building those skills to overcome stress and anxiety. And we did a lot of searching within ourselves as teachers, administrators, and parents about our own ability to deal with our cycles of pain and grief. And I know it took a little bit for me just to digest some of what Sarah shared with us. And tonight we get an opportunity to link into what we as a school have been talking about in the form of community. And if you've been reading some of the updates on Parent Square, I've been spelling it with, and this is totally borrowed from somebody else, but community with a capital U, emphasizing the unity that we have all together. And part of our mission as a school is to build and nurture our students as a whole. And part of that includes addressing not just their academic needs, but also their spiritual and social emotional growth as well. And as I was talking with Sarah earlier, I was just talking about how, social emotional learning depends on not just self-awareness and managing ourselves, but also our relationship to others and those skills that we build. And so tonight, we're going to be talking about building community within your homes. And I think it's an important thing that we all get to directly talk about this, because it's not something we necessarily get to see as myself as a principal or even teachers, because that's a part of how you raise your kids within your nuclear household. So Sarah has a lot of great information to share with us tonight. And as we begin, I'm going to start us off in a word of prayer again. So let's pray. Our great Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening that we get to have Sarah return to us. We thank you for her wisdom. We thank you for all the work that you are doing in our school to build community as we look together towards a vision where we see our students confident in who they are and made in your design. And we also recognize the partnership and the importance and community that we need in the form of our parents. So I thank you for these parents that are here tonight and those who will be listening in later on the recording. We pray that you would bless Sarah as she speaks with us tonight, give her wisdom and insight, and continue to guide us as we raise our children in a way that they would grow to love and fear you, but also to be bold in how they go out and serve the world. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. Just to do another short intro of Sarah, she is a licensed professional clinical counselor, and her particular passion, I know, is working with families, and she's a mom herself. I know last time we shared that she has 2 middle schoolers, so those, again, of you who have middle schoolers out there, she's living that right now, and I know it's a difficult season, and she also has a 3rd grader, so balancing all of that in addition to meeting clients both virtually and also in person, and we're so thankful that she has a heart to also share with a greater community of others, including ourselves here at Westport Lutheran. So Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much. It is such a joy to be here. Just want to make sure that the mic is working okay for everyone. So good. Yes, I am right there with you guys in the parenting joys of parenting, right? The throes of parenting. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And that way we can get started. All right, so we are talking tonight about creating community at home. I love this idea. This is something that has really impacted my family in so many ways. And I'm just so excited to share this with you all today. So I'll start by showing you a picture of my family. I don't think I got to do this last time. So this is us. We are the Primseys. We've got my twin girls there, and then my son Jace in the middle. And it is amazing and such a handful, right? So one of the things I hear a lot in my work with parents and families is just how difficult the shift from having little kids to having middle years kids is. I was just actually at the doctor last week, and we got talking, and she has kids about my kids' age, and she was like, how do you parent, now that they're older? Because I think her daughter just turned 11. And I was like, I know we really struggled with that transition. You go from kind of managing everything for your kids to doing things together, like doing things with your kids, right? And I told her, I was like, it's like all of the parenting strategies that we had used up until that point just all of a sudden stopped working. We were like, we had to discover how to communicate, how to work through conflict, how to parent, how to discipline, all of the things. And that is something I want to talk with you guys about tonight, because actually middle years begins at 8 years old. So some of you might be going through that phase, and you might be thinking like, where did my sweet little angel child go? All of a sudden they're, talking back and throwing tantrums again, or gosh, maybe they might even say the dreaded words, I hate you. All of that is definitely normal and a part of puberty beginning, which again begins around 8 years old. So we have the middle years from 8 until 12, right? And so I know that encompasses a lot of our kiddos. For you guys who have kids earlier than that, just you wait, enjoy those sweet years. Another funny story, I remember being at the zoo. We had just had twins, right? They were 2 and running all over the place. And there was this sweet couple, and they came up to us and I'm like, we have twins too. Ours are, 20 now, they do grow, you'll get through it, kind of a thing. And I just looked at the mom and I said, when does it get easier? That is the question. And I hear that from so many parents. When does it get easier? And the dad said, well, maybe between ages 7 and 11. And I was like, okay, that's it, but it was just kind of a funny situation, just realizing that, man, we are in the middle of a job that is both the most challenging and the most rewarding job that any of us will ever have. We get to be a part of shaping the next generation, of watching our beautiful sons and daughters grow. And it can be so hard and so overwhelming, because as we learned last time I spoke with you guys, our own emotions get in the way, right, of that parenting relationship. So often we feel triggered, we feel scared, we feel overwhelmed, we feel ill-equipped, or even we might remember some of the bad things or hard things that happened when we were kids. And so all of that is happening inside us, and it makes us have kind of a hard time being that safe space for our kids and their growth and their journey and their development. So if you didn't get a chance to see the talk last time, I would love for you to request that. You can request it in the chat. I know Charisse will be able to send that to you. She has that recorded, and it's just such a good introductory into like getting yourself in a healthy place so that you can support and encourage and grow up your kiddos. So as I'm talking and we go through this tonight, I want you to feel free to just write every question under the sun in that chat. We will take a couple breaks for questions, and no questions are off limits, right? Like, this is your safe space, your school community. I know that you guys want to create a place where you can support each other as you're raising your kiddos. And so anything that you feel like, even if it's on a different topic, anything you have on your mind or that this talk may bring up for you, feel free to put that in the chat. All right, so last time we learned, like I said, in order to help our children overcome their stress, anxiety, and fear, we had to first start within ourselves, right? We had to look inward. We talked about the phrase that we can't give something to someone that we don't already have first, right? So we want to do that when it comes to building community at home. And this might be a new topic for you. You maybe have not thought about creating community at home. Sometimes we just kind of get in survival mode, right? We're just trying to get all the things done, and we don't stop and realize, like, my home is a community too. And if you think about it, kind of think through like a team. You know, how does a community work? Well, one of the best illustrations of a community that we have in our society is a team. When a team is functioning well, they are able to do great things. I know some of you guys are probably sports fans. We've got great teams here in the Bay Area. Our family's from the Midwest, so we are Cardinals fans. To the core. I hope you still can respect me knowing that about me tonight. But we do love the Warriors and the 49ers, but man, we root for our Cardinals. So those teams, though, they have good years, they have hard years, but ultimately the goal of the team is to work together well to make everyone successful. Right? Our job as parents is not just to make our kids successful, but we want to feel successful too. So we're going to talk about how to do that tonight. And to start, we're going to look at 4 different types of parenting. Before we can really get into building that community and building that team, we have to stop and ask ourselves, what kind of coach am I? Right? What is my style? And so there are 4 different types of parenting that psychologists have discovered. We have permissive, which is the whatever you want parenting, right? They have low expectations, very few rules, very indulgent, accepting, lenient. They avoid confrontation, but incredibly warm, right? So they have low demandedness and high responsiveness. So lots of warmth, lots of responding to their kids. Yes. Sorry, I got turned around in my own illustration here. All right. The second one we're going to go down is the uninvolved or the neglectful. So that is like an I don't really care parenting model, right? There's no expectations, very few rules. The rules that are there are not enforced. Parents are maybe even absent. The kids might be doing their own thing all the time, very passive, neglectful. Parents are not interested. They don't really know their kids. They're competing priorities, right? Maybe work is the most important thing. So that would be low demandedness, but also low responsiveness, so low warmth in the home. Then you've got the bottom other side, authoritarian, which is the because I said so. Full disclosure, those words have come out of my mouth before too, right? I think as parents, it's natural to kind of go through some of the cycles of all of these, but authoritarian, because I've said so, is high expectations, clear rules, very forceful, autocratic, rigid, lots of punishment, limited warmth, because connection is not the priority, following the rules and obedience is the priority. So we have low warmth and responsiveness to needs, to our kids' needs, right? And very high demands. And then the last one, which I think is what we all try to be, is this authoritative parenting. It's a let's discuss this, right? There still are high expectations. There's clear standards. Assertive parents, like, maybe this sounds like you will have chores to do and we expect you to do them. And if you want screens after dinner, then you got to have the chores finished, right? High demandedness, but high warmth would be, high responsiveness would be, I know chores are hard. I don't like them either. Let's do it together kind of a thing. Or I'm going to do my chores, you do your chores. Maybe we can play Minecraft afterwards, right? So it's democratic. There's room for the kids to share if they like the rules, if they think the rules are outdated or need adjustment. Flexible parenting, responsive to the kids' needs, and warm. So another word for this would be maybe even gentle parenting. I think is kind of, there's a fad of calling authoritative parenting that, but it's really this high responsiveness, like we're there for our kids, we're invested, but we also have high expectations. This is the parent we want to be when we envision ourselves being calm. If any of you guys watch Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, this is mom and dad Tiger, right? Like you watch that show and you're like, how, I wish I sounded like those parents, but the truth is, under stress, we all slip to one of these other models. And that is part of being a person. You guys, our kids do not need us to be perfect. It is okay that we are human. There was one moment in my home where I think I maybe snapped at my kids and got very authoritarian. And then I felt very guilty and was like, I am so sorry, you guys, I messed up. I didn't need to yell at you. Will you forgive me, right? And I said something like, wouldn't it be great if I was perfect, if you had a perfect mom that never made mistakes? And Isabella looked at me and she goes, no, that would be horrible. It's like, what? Maybe you're not understanding me. No, I mean, like if I was like perfect, right? And I was like a good mom who like never, yelled or made mistakes or lost my temper, right? She goes, Mom, I would hate that. I was like, Why? She said, because then you wouldn't understand me because I'm not perfect. I thought that was so powerful, right? Like our kids need real flesh and blood parents. That is part of being on our team because we are a work in progress still too, right? So let's take a minute. I want you to kind of look at these 4 parenting models and kind of self-assess. Where do you want to go? What would be your ideal? Where do you go in stress? Where does your partner go in stress? Where does your parents go in stress? And just kind of notice, like the goal for parenting is to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves so that we can show up for our kids. If we have a moment of stress, stopping and taking a break, re-engaging, reconnecting, and continuing on that purpose that we have, that unity track that we're wanting to build. If we look at the effects of the different types of parenting, scientists and psychologists have discovered that when you have, I love this image. I didn't make this one. This one, I couldn't find where to credit it, but I promise I didn't take it. I found it on the internet. You can find it too. But I love that it's got the mom and dad plus the kids equals, I don't know what that image is. We're all kids and playing together. But moving past that, just looking at the effects, right? If you stop all the way down to the bottom and it says the uninvolved, the kid's self-image, it's been proven, research has shown you have low self-esteem, little confidence, they hate themselves, they hate others, their emotions, they hide their feelings, they maybe have irregular feelings. All of our kids have irregular feelings to a certain extent, so don't freak out about that. We'll talk about that in a minute. They might avoid feelings, right? Social skills would be withdrawn, disrespectful at school or in the classroom, distrustful of adults or other kids, and then academically, they're going to perform poorly on their own. Then we move up, authoritarian, the impact on children's self-image when parents in the home are consistently authoritarian would be that they have low self-esteem, they don't trust their feelings, maybe have weak behavior performance, right? So they might feel like insecure or timid, right? The social skills would be not getting along, poor social skills, hard to concentrate, maybe mid-achievement. When you're in a permissive home, the impact would be, and again, consistent permissive, not just sometimes we slip up, would be high self-esteem, self-confident, but less responsible and more impulsive. They will have irregular feelings that they voice loudly, trouble keeping friends, and low interest in school. And so ultimately, again, that goal of authoritative, where we have limits, we have rules, but we also have connection and warmth, is going to be that high self-esteem. They know how to be assertive. They trust their feelings and regulate their emotions well. Self-control, you guys be careful. I'm thinking of my kids, and no kid does this all the time. We mean as a rule when they get to about teenage years, right? So there's growth mindset here. But social skills, they're going to grow to be socially responsible, less peer pressure, will give in less to peer pressure, they get along or empathetic, and then academically, they learn well, they're more confident and have high achievement. And so that's the outcomes, which is why kind of starting with how do we show up as parents in the team, in the community of our homes is really important, so that we can kind of look at what we're doing and just take a minute to pause. Notice again, back on this screen, right? What could you do to improve? This is not about guilt or shame. This is about support. My goal here is to come alongside each of you and to offer support, to give you these skills that I know so that you can begin to implement them and see transformation in your families. So wherever your starting point is okay, it's just about where your next baby step is, right? So maybe just write down some ideas of what you want to try to improve in your home. Maybe these are things you and your spouse or your partner can talk about together. Maybe these are things that you could include community leaders involved to help, or even therapists, right? If it gets to a point where you feel like there are not changes you can make on your own, that is what we are here for. So moving ahead, looking at our kids, I'm going to go back so we don't get distracted. The idea, okay, what type of parent am I, right? You think about a team that you've been a part of. What made those teams effective? What made those teams ineffective? So pick any team you've ever been on and do some self-reflection for a second. What worked well? What was the coach like? Have you ever had a coach that was super permissive or authoritarian or uninvolved or authoritative? How did that impact your behavior on that team? So recognizing that this is a work in progress, we're going to start viewing and begin viewing our families as a team that we can lead, that we can invest in, that we can cheer on, right? So what happens next? I want to talk about not only where we are as parents, but where are our kids? Some of us I know have little kids that are still in that cute phase that we, are able to just really mold and form and kind of dictate the schedule as they get older. Again, right around 8, 9, 10, that gets a little more challenging. Your relationship with your child begins to change. The discipline stops working as much. They might have mood changes. They might have emotion changes. They might speak differently or have different interests all of a sudden. I know with my girls, they went from wearing rainbows and unicorns to like all of a sudden my daughter only wore black. And I was like, and I don't mean like goth, I just mean like black t-shirts and like black backpack. And there was a little bit of grieving for me in that transition, because I knew that it was a mark of the little childhood years being behind us. There's something sad about that, but also amazing, because I'm learning these girls now as they're getting more confident, and they're, my daughter who only wore black, it's because she's a little fashionista, right? She has to have her cute choker, and she has like the way she wears her jeans and her hair, and she's expressing herself and trying to figure out who she is. And it's beautiful to watch her really come into her own as she grows. So what is happening in our kids, their teammates, what is going on in their brains and their bodies? We've heard things about hormones, but truly what's happening in the actual brain is more significant on kid behavior than what is happening hormonally. So if we look at the brain growth stages, starting from birth until age 3 really is the most significant amount of brain growth the human goes through. After that, you get into the preschool years. Once they start elementary school, the brain development slows down significantly, which is interesting, right? Because usually we wait to get our kids in school until about that age. And yet all of that brain development and growth is happening from birth to 3 and then 3 to 6, right? And so, just realizing that as a parent, that's why, all the scientists and doctors are saying, sing to your kid, talk to your babies, like do all these things, because that is the time that truly their brains are growing the most rapidly and the most development is happening. Once they enter school age, it slows down a little. It's still obviously very important. They have other skills, like they are able to sit still and actually learn in different ways, which prepares them for academia. So it's good that their brains have slowed down, so then they can take in that information in new ways. So learning about this, we're just going to kind of go through this quickly. But the idea that from around age 10 and above, most changes serve to improve the function of more sophisticated and versatile frontal lobes. This is where all those good decisions are made. Now, if you remember last time, we talked about the brain, and if you hold up your fist, maybe you're new this week, so just hold up your fist with me like this, and I want you to realize this is your brain. Your brain is much bigger than this, but this is just an idea, a model. This front part is the prefrontal cortex. That's where you make all of your good judgments and decisions, right? All this top stuff is the executive functioning, language, problem solving, communicating, right? And then down here is your amygdala, which is the emotion center that sends messages to the hypothalamus. And that's where we learned, which we'll go over in a minute, whenever it senses danger, it's going to send that message, danger, danger. We flip our lids, and then the top part of our brain is no longer connected to the bottom part of our brain, because all of that blood goes into our body so we can either fight or run away from the threat that we are facing. Now, if you have someone who is between ages 8 through 13, that amygdala is overactive, especially as it gets older into ages 10 and 11 for girls, a little bit later for boys. What I have noticed for that age group is that everything is embarrassing. Everything. I mean, I told my girls, I'm like, you're going to have to make me a list of what I am not allowed to say, what I am allowed to say, because all the things that I used to do. Now everything is embarrassing. And so we would laugh about it because we taught, I'm their mom. And so of course I taught them the brain and the brain science. And I was like, this is just your middle school brain telling you that you're in danger from not fitting in socially. And so it's trying to make you fit in because you care more about being a part of the tribe when you didn't care before. When you were a little kid, you were free, right? But now that you're middle school, your brain is developing in a way that says community is important. I have to fit in. And so everything's embarrassing because you might make me not fit in, Mom, right? And so realizing that this is what's happening in your kid's brain is really a huge thing for the functioning of your community at home and your team, because otherwise I would think it was me, right? That I just all of a sudden am like not as cool to them as I used to be. And that's not true. Your middle schoolers love you. They respect you more than anybody else on this planet. They just will not tell you that anymore until you develop the language to be able to do that in this new phase of your relationship. But realizing that in their brain, now all of a sudden, social relationships are much more important. Again, this has to go back. I mean, if you think about it, ages 11 and 12, I mean, girls were getting married at that time, ancient ancestors, right? And so realizing our bodies were wired to survive in those ways, and our brains in some ways are still wired in ancient primal surviving. Knowing that is really helpful. I think God designed it that way to keep us alive and to keep us safe. But in this 2023, it's not actually dangerous if your mom like hugs you in public, right? Like that's not the same thing as a saber-toothed tiger coming into your cave. And so we have to tell our brains, we have to teach our kids to tell their brains, hey, you're actually really safe. Of course, I respect your body. I won't hug you in public if you don't want me to, but just know that your friends still like you, right? So realizing that the frontal lobe duties right up here, motor function, problem solving, memory, language, impulse control, huge one. So we wonder why all of a sudden our kids are doing crazy things and saying crazy things. It's because when they hit age 8 through about 10, they actually lose a big part of their brain. Their brain just sloughs off, which is really an interesting thing that happens. But the reason that happens is to make room for the new adult brain to develop. The brain continues development through age 25. So all of this time that we have from now, and some of your kids might be 6 years old, right? So you're talking 6 through 25 is how long it takes for the brain to fully develop. That is a little terrifying because most of us made very big life decisions before we were 25 years old without fully having a real like full adult brain. So realizing here, between ages, and this is an important part here, I'll just highlight, between ages 13 and 15, brain size and function increase. So it sloughs off through, ages 12, and then age 13 and 15, it starts increasing again, especially in motor and spatial perception areas of the frontal cortex. So that's where you get, the athletes are starting to come out, and it's also around this time, the pea-sized pituitary gland located at the base of the brain starts secreting different hormones into the bloodstream that will cause their other organs to secrete hormones of their own, giving away to sexual maturation and reproductive capability. So there we go. We start entering into puberty, right? 8 through 15. So there we go. So a little understanding gives you a lot of compassion and grace for your kiddos. And here are some images just of actual brains. The 5-year-old brain, right? You've got the red and yellow means less fully mature, and blue and purple means parts of brain more fully matured. So we were able to watch the brain develop, which is so cool. I probably lost half of you because you maybe don't think brains are as cool as I do. But just stick with me. I promise we'll get to the tangible stuff in a second. But realizing that your child in the teen brain still has a very significant part of their brain that is not fully developed. And that is the controlling impulses, executive functioning, and all of that. This is really important when it comes to peer pressure. and especially addiction, because when kids are introduced to drugs and substances at a young age, they are actually more likely to develop lifelong addictions because of this lack of brain development. So when we're thinking about developing community in the home, we're actually trying to combat the world around us, right? Like, we want to be the safe place for our kids. We want to create such a safe and inclusive community that our kids feel belonging in, that when they're teenagers, they don't need the peer pressure because they already feel that satisfaction at home. You know, they don't need to experiment with the things that are being, done around them, because they have that security and they have that attachment and they have that connection with their family in the home already. So knowing this is just really background information to help equip you into why this is important and where to start in terms of building age appropriate expectations for our kiddos, right? So lastly, we just talked about what is it like when we flip our lids. So, one of the issues with the authoritarian and the do it because I said so is often kids get afraid by that level of confrontation. Like, my kids really start getting upset, even if my tone is firm. And I'm not like a harsh person. I'm pretty laid back, easygoing. But if, like, you're pushed as a parent, you might be like, no, I mean it. Like, right now is bedtime, right? And you can see them start to like, oh, okay, mom's serious. Well, when you see that behavior, right? Like, that is the body showing fear. It's a really easy way to get your kids to do what you want them to do, is to make them afraid. That is not a good long lasting choice. And we all know that, but sometimes we choose the cheap way of getting what we want as a parent because we're lazy. I call it couch parenting. I like to sit on my couch and tell my kids what to do rather than get up and actually coach and help them, right? Because I'm tired and I worked all day, and we feel that draw to disengage. And it really takes effort to see your parenting as just as much of a job, maybe more important than the job that you did earlier that day. And so realizing, okay, so I am going to notice when my kids are afraid, and I'm going to remember that that means that they are maybe close to their lids being flipped. When their prefrontal cortex is engaged, when mine is engaged, we're able to have calm, rational thought, to discuss things, to have the behaviors we're looking for, mental flexibility, able to make good choices, right? When I'm afraid, my lid is flipped. I don't have access to all that good functioning up in the top of my brain. I have big feelings. I have anger, fear, anxiety, sadness. I'm unable to make good decisions and calm down. And so when our kids are flipping out, that is not the time to push them to do what you want them to do. The relationship has been broken for a moment, right? The best thing that we can do when our kids are freaking out is to acknowledge, I probably was freaking out first, maybe. Even if I wasn't, they need help. And so to stop and to say, I see that you need help. I'm here. Maybe rub their back, ask if they need a cup of water. What can I do to help? Let's take a minute to both calm down together. We're here together. I think so often parents want to walk away when there are high emotions, but really what our kids need is for us to press in and to be there more, especially as they grow into those middle years. They're needing the safety and security of an adult to show them how to regulate the emotions that they're having. And that's our job, is to be that model, right? So, questions. I see there's a couple in the chat. Sharice, would you want to read them out for us?
Those are actually some questions that you were asking everyone that I retyped into the.
Okay.
But unless you got some direct messages there in your chat.
Okay. Also, let's see. Cool. Okay, I see. Got it. Anybody have any questions? All right, well, this is a good time to then switch gears. Let's go to the fun stuff instead. Creating a family mission statement. So now that we understand where we're all coming from, what does it look like to come together? So what we're going to do is we are actually going to take some time to build family mission statements, to build that unity that we're wanting to build with a team. If you think about that team that worked really well for you, probably you all had a common goal, right? So like you think about the 49ers, they all knew that they were playing football. And that is just at the basic level, something I think that we could use in our families. Like, what are we trying to accomplish together, right? So how do we do this? Step one, very easy. Pick a time to meet as a family. Make sure it's a fun night that everyone looks forward to. You know, you want to have fun snacks. You want to maybe, either be like outside on your patio or around the kitchen table, maybe in your jammies, but something that really like shows like this is an exciting thing. This isn't a stressful thing. We're just here to build our family together. Step two, to write our values. So what you do next at that family table is you let everyone share what they love most about your family and what values mean the most to each of you. If you need a little bit of help, here are some questions that you guys can talk through. Who are some families that you admire and why? And maybe stop tonight and just kind of ask yourself that question. Who are some families in my life that I admire? Why do I admire them? Then maybe ask, why do you like being in our family? What makes us special? And what do you think about that? Think about that for your kids for a minute. Why do you like being in your family? What makes you guys special? As I was working through this years ago, some things that I thought that made us special, like I shared with you, we're all Cardinal fans. We really love Christmas. So every year, one of the ways that we really bring that family together is we buy matching PJs and, we take our family photo. Last year, we surprised everybody with onesies that were their favorite animals. So my son had a fox onesie. I had a unicorn onesie. Isabella was a wolf. Sophia was a panda. And then we surprised my husband with a gorilla onesie, and he was a really good sport and put it on for the picture and everything. So I should have showed that picture. That was amazing. But those are the type of things when I wrote what makes us special, I wrote we like to have fun. Fun is a huge value of our family. And when I first started my mission statement for my family, my kids were 7 and 4. And I was thinking about, how do I create this place where home is our favorite place to be? Of all the places we can go and of all the things around us, how do we make it to where home is our favorite place to be? One of the things I see a lot too in working with my clients is there's this kind of escapism thing that happens in the Bay Area where people like to travel a lot, and there are beautiful places that are kind of easy to get to for us here. We're so fortunate. But are we traveling because we hate our lives and we need an escape from them? Or are we traveling because we just want some fun and rejuvenation and rest, right? Like, how do we build lives that we don't need to escape from? How do we build lives that we love? And I think it really starts in our homes. So question 3, what habits do we have in our family that you don't like? And that might, be something for you to ask yourself first. For me, at the time, I didn't like that we yelled. I wanted yelling to stop. It's not productive and it scared everybody. And, it just kept the stress up. Like, how do we fix that, right? How do we create a space where we don't need to yell, where our needs are met, where we see each other and we actually care for each other and ourselves really well? What are your favorite family traditions? And ask your kids this. Let everybody weigh in. And you can be vulnerable with your kids too. I think they want to hear the things that are imperfect in your eyes also. I would just be cautious not to say, like the habits we have in my family that I don't like are how messy you kids are. Right? Like, that's really like shaming. We really want to keep this, especially we want to model for our kids that this is a positive experience. If there are habits that we're doing, maybe start just with the habit that you do that you think that you don't like, That way you're leading with vulnerability, and you're using courage, and you're opening that up so that your kids can maybe reflect on their own behavior too, instead of maybe, one of your kids saying, well, I don't like that my brother does this and this and this, right? Like, that's not the place for this. Maybe you can guide them to say, what's a habit that you have that you don't like, or you might even open it up to the kids, since they're the ones with less power. Hey kids, what are some habits that you see mom and dad have that you don't like? We recently kind of redid this in our family, and we were kind of shocked actually to hear how our kids felt like we weren't spending enough time with them. And when we're like home in the evenings, we do family dinner, and way more than I think most families are able to do. Thankfully, we're able to prioritize that. And I was like, what does that mean? And so we got to dig in. Instead of being like, what? You guys are crazy. Do you know how good you have it? We don't say that. We say, oh, thank you for telling me. And then you repeat back to them what they said. So in my case, you feel like you need more time with us. Can you help me understand what that means to you? What kind of time are you looking for? And as we dug in and asked more questions, we learned they want one-on-one time. We used to do dates, one-on-one dates, and we stopped doing that. I can't even tell you when it just kind of faded. And so they were requesting, can we do that again? And once I understood what it was, I was like, oh yeah, I actually really love doing that. Of course we can do that. And so I'm taking my daughter ice skating this weekend. But kind of recognizing, like, defensiveness might be there in you, and that's really like your thing to deal with on your own time. In the family, you want to model openness. You want them to talk to you. When your kids aren't talking to you, you can't do anything to connect with them or fix it, right? But you want them to talk to you. So you want to ask questions. You want to dig into what they're trying to say. And then asking, how do you want others to describe you and your family? And really thinking about that for yourself right now. How would you like other people to describe you and your family? Whatever came up for you, that's likely one of your values, right? And so recognizing that means that's important to you. And then lastly, really uniquely, how can your family make the world a better place together based on your interests? Maybe you're the family that, our neighbors, the dad is a DJ. And so the way that their family makes the world a better place is they host this neighborhood party every Thanksgiving where he DJs for the neighborhood. And they open their home. He always gives this gift of really good olive oil. And they just open this opportunity to connect, and that's what makes them unique. Maybe your family is a family that loves to bike ride. So maybe you make the world a better place by bike riding and bringing waters for the other bike riders, to hand out. Or maybe you guys make the world a better place if you're artistic. I love that tradition that started in COVID of painting rocks and leaving them at parks with inspiring messages on them. What does it look like for you guys to live out your mission, how you can uniquely make the world a better place? So, and this one is a great question for just you guys, the parents, to think through. What would make you most proud of your kids, of who they grow up to be? What are you hoping for them? Recognizing this is your value. This is your mission. This is what you want to create in your home. This is how you build community. You do it intentionally, right? You slow down. You recognize your strengths and weaknesses, recognize your kids' strengths and weaknesses. You come together, you talk about your mission, your purpose, your values, and it can be simple. Those are really big words, but it can really just be something simple. And I have some examples for you. But step 3, the last part, you just get creative and make your mission statement, right? Once you have your values, brainstorm together what this looks like practically. How do you live it out? And how you can create a mission statement everyone in your family can get behind. Right? So you want to keep it fun and find a creative way to display this in your home. And here are just some ideas. This is from Leader in Me, a family mission statement template. So if you're someone that needs guidelines, this is for you. Go ahead and fill out these questions together. start that family meeting time and have it be super fun. Sit down and say, hey, like, we want to create this mission. We want to come together and build community in a home. We want to be a place of belonging and safety for each other. So let's do this together. We are at our best when, we are at our worst when, what we enjoy doing together, what our unique gifts and talents are, what do we value as a family, how can we help others outside of our family, what do we want to be remembered for, and how can we help each other be the best we can be. And then, so this is a Big Life Journal. That's a great book. It's on Amazon if you need some help just kind of digging in and helping your kids to build this connection. This is our family's core values. And it can be as simple as this: choose to be happy, be honest, stand for the truth, love one another, resilience and courage, learning and hard work, the best version of you, right? Be the best version of you. Or this is a family mission statement that a family created and posted online. They simplified it to 3 words: live, love, learn. They want to seek new adventures. They want to choose to be happy. Whoa, that is such a huge one. To love each other always, be curious and learn. Attitude is everything. Be respectful, act with kindness, nurture friendships, be grateful, faith. And here's another different idea. This is what one family did. They said, we are creative and loving, passionate, persistent. We're joyful information seekers. We value ideas, sharing, and hope. We are family centered, right? We are brave. We believe in ourselves, value individuality, truthful, show compassion and empathy, love learning, inspired to live a healthy life. And this is my family. So like I told you, we did this when my kids were 7 and 4. And this is still to this day. I took this off my fridge. I took a picture of it so I could share it with you. I want you to look at what it looks like if you have younger kids, because those other ones look like really formal, like maybe if you have older kids, they could get on Canva and make it look real pretty. You want to put this in the kids' hands as much as possible so that they really feel like they are contributors to the family, like their voice matters, right? So my kids wrote this out. They wanted, and we all together agreed, like after we talked about our values, they said we want there to be like our family rules, and these are the only things in our family to this day that we have consequences for. So they wanted, number 1, to be show respect. And so we're able to say, like, hey, if you're not speaking respectfully, like then you don't get to have that thing you're asking for. Can you try again with respect? Right? And they know it. They'll say that to each other, like, hey, I don't like how you talk to me. We got to show respect. Can you try again? Right? Number 2, be responsible. This is really great now that my kids have phones, because I get to say, hey, look on the fridge. Number 2 rule that you wrote is responsibility. We value that in this family. And so if you can't be responsible, right, then you don't get your phone. So we get to have that clear rule, like responsibility. What does that mean? It means doing your homework, doing your chores, like being a contributing member of the family, which was really cute. When my son was a little bit older, maybe he's like 7, he said, Mom, I feel like a freeloader. I'm like, Jace, what does that mean? You feel like a freeloader? He's like, I'm the only one that doesn't have as many chores as everybody else. I'm like, hey, we can fix that. You want more chores? Let's talk about this, And so he came to me asking for chores, you guys. Like, that's not because I'm the super parent. Like, it's just when you have a family community, it makes it so much easier because you're one family. Like, the dishes build up. They don't think, oh, Mom will do it, right? It's our family has an issue. We got to come together and deal with this. Whose turn is it to do dishes, right? So be responsible, say I'm sorry. Jace wrote forgive, which is really cute. Show kindness, take turns. That is one they still regret putting on here to this day, because even as 12-year-olds, they say taking turns is hard. They would rather not take turns. I'm like, well, but why did we want it as a rule? Why do we value that as a family, right? And they know this was their idea. And then love always, be your best. And so all of us signed it, and we all put it up on the fridge to remind ourselves, like, we are in this together. We want to build a safe place. And when tempers get high, like we all stop, we'll have a family meeting, and we'll get to sit down and say, like, hey, it takes every single one of us to create safety in this home. like emotional safety even, right? So let's all calm down together. We all love each other. What is actually happening? What's the problem? And we get to talk and be heard and work together to solve those issues. So that is all I have for you guys tonight. I hope that you can use this template, use these resources to really start kind of just your own journey and what this looks like for you. As you see, there's no right or wrong. It gets to be whatever your family needs. You guys are unique. You're created, man, all of you, each of you are unique people, right? And allowing that individuality and allowing that creativity, I think your kids, even young kids, will surprise you with how important this is to them and how they feel that they're being shown respect by being a part of it. And so then that respect gets shown back. And Jeremy and I, we used to talk because we were both parented very authoritarian, like this is, lots of physical punishment, and we realized, like, as adults, we don't have the best relationship with our parents, and we didn't want that for our kids. We both studied. I'm a therapist, my husband's a pastor. We wanted to do it differently, and we wanted to learn how, to raise kids, not that were obedient kids, but responsible kids who felt confident as adults. And we want our relationships with them to last through the lifespan. We want to be close, and we want to have that connection through each of the stages of life. And sometimes that takes work, but the work is worth it. And I just want you guys to know you're in such a great space. You have a community of teachers and administrators and people there to support you through this, to ask questions to. But I do want to open it up tonight. Does anybody have any questions for me before we end?
Sarah, there are a couple of questions in the chat that I'll read out, but I also just want to ask a follow-up question to what you just mentioned, because I know it came up a bit in the previous session as well, as far as family of origin and our experiences as children in our own nuclear families and then becoming parents. So what happens when you as a parent have an ideal of who you want to be, like, oh, I'm never going to be like that because that's what I experienced as a kid. Yeah. But you end up, seeing parts of yourself that are like, well, that's a reflection of how I was brought up. And that's something I said I would never do. And as you're trying to build team and community in your home and you see this in your own self, like, what do you do to reconcile that as a parent, maybe even together with your kids too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, coming to terms with your own story is really important. I say that because it's not easy. I don't think I even recognized that my parents' way of parenting damaged me until I had my own kids. And the only way I realized it is because I started having memories come up after, like, when my kids were like 1.5. And I realized I felt emotionally not equipped to handle my kids. I think we all feel that from time to time. I also had twins, and that was intense, right? But I think just realizing, like, some of us have never stopped to consider our family of origin, right? And so really coming to terms with your own story. Like, I love my parents. I have a good, healthy relationship with them. It's not the connection that I would want to have with my kids when they are adults, but it's healthy. There's good boundaries now, right? I always thought they were pretty good parents. And so I think sometimes we have a hard time even calling out what didn't work because we're afraid that we're, like, dishonoring our parents, or we're afraid that, we're not loving them well by pointing out what they did wrong. But, this is how you honor your parents, is by understanding where they missed it with you, so that you don't pass that down to the next generation, right? You're honoring by covering their shame, and no one is perfect. Your kids will need to do this for you too. But so I would say first you need to reconcile, like, okay, what is my story? And that it's safe to do that and it's okay. Secondly, I would say I have really good news for you, and I want you all to hear this and believe this. You are not and will never be your parent. End of story. Like, there's no way you can be your mother or your father, right? You are a completely different person. You will have your own struggles, your own places you fail, but you will never be them. And so it's okay to explore what comes up for you, because just because you had a moment doesn't mean you are that person. My guess is as you asked that question, even you said, I'm noticing that it's not something I want to do. That right there is different for many of us than what our parents did. Because most of our parents, that's just the way it was. They didn't stop and think, I don't want to do this. That's just how people parented back then, right? And so realizing now, being able to stop and say, okay, this is not something I want to do, is half the battle. From there, you can say out loud, okay, I think I'm getting stressed out. Hold on a second, give me a minute. I need to take a deep breath. And you're modeling emotion regulation, because really all that's happening is you're having feelings. You know, a memory came up, you were triggered with something. Usually what happens is we get those intense feelings when our kids are doing something that we were punished for as kids. So if our children are doing some behavior that we used to get punished for, we want to stop that behavior quickly. And it's subconscious often, how it just goes so fast. And so sometimes we don't recognize we're triggered until we're actually yelling. And my son, we try to come up with code words. Like if he thinks I'm being too firm, I ask him to say like, no, I forget what it is now, but some way of saying, Mom, I need you to calm down. You know, he's able to do it. If I'm being firm with his sisters, he's able to say, hey, I think you're being a little too firm, which I appreciate. In our home, I don't have this need to be like the best parent. And so if someone sees me making a mistake, I actually want them to tell me so that I can fix it. But with him, I think he kind of usually goes like this and is like, oh, that's scary. And I'm like, okay. Sometimes that just makes me mad because I think he's trying to get out of brushing his teeth. But other times I think I legitimately am like crossing into, I just want you to do what I'm saying because I'm stressed out. And that's not good parenting, right? And so when you notice the trigger inside, take a deep breath, acknowledge it out loud. Hey, I think I'm just having a moment of stress. I need to calm down for a minute. Could I have a hug? Or I'll be right back. Or I need to go wash my face or get a drink of water. Or maybe it's, hey, honey, like I'm tagging out. I'm past my limit, like you're up, you know, and you don't need to say that in front of the kids. You and your spouse can have a code word, but self-care comes first. Like you are a human being who deserves comfort. You are a human being who deserves love. And if you're having a moment like that, that means that you're remembering something that was really hard for you and you are the one that needs attention. Does that answer the question, or do you have another question after that?
Yes, that answers it. Thank you, Sarah.
Okay.
Another question, which was referencing something you said earlier, after you were talking again about kids flipping their lid. So if you have a child who is very upset, and you mentioned, you know, leaning in, but they're unwilling to talk about what's wrong, what's a strategy that you do to engage that in a way that's not going to help make them further shut down?
Great question. They probably can't talk about what's wrong because they're in the moment of freak out. And so the best thing would be to just kind of reflect, like, it seems like you're feeling upset. You know, do you need a hug? Or I'm right here, and rub their back, you know, depending on the kid. With my son, I can scoop him into my lap still, and I can kiss his ears and get him to kind of laugh a little bit. And I'll just say, it's okay to be upset. I'm right here. When you're ready, we can talk about it. It's okay if you need a minute. One thing my kids said when we had kind of a family meeting recently, and I was asking my husband and I were like, what are we doing right? What could we be doing better? Right? Like, tell us your feedback, kids, the way like a manager would do to his like employees. Right? And one of the things my son said was pretty shocking. He said, I feel like you don't respect my feelings. And I'm like, first thing that came up was like, seriously, I'm in the business of feelings. How dare you? You know, but I didn't say any of that. I took a deep breath and realized, I'm afraid right now. I'm worried that I'm hurting my kid. Okay, so let's take a breath. And all I said on the outside was, okay, well, tell me what you mean by that. I'd like to understand more. So a lot of times you have all this stuff going on inside. You just are very, if you watch Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, just be very Daniel Tiger's mom on the outside in that moment. But to really think, like, you know, ask questions and try to dig in if they do want to talk. And he said, when I'm upset, like in your question, it feels like you're telling me I have to stop feeling that way. And I asked him to tell me more. And he was saying, like, at night when it's time to brush his teeth, which of course is the time he melts down. And I'm like, you just have to brush your teeth. You're spending time crying that you could be brushing your teeth. And so we're not going to have as much time to read. And I'm talking just like this. I'm not saying stop crying. I'm like, hey, if you choose to lay on the floor and cry right now, we won't have as much time to read in bed, right? But to him, he was translating that like, I don't care that he's sad. And I get it, right? Because as parents, we really forget empathy in the rush of parenting. Like, we're just trying to get kids to bed so that we can have 10 minutes to ourselves before we have to go to bed, right? Or like, gosh, heaven forbid we watch a TV show sometimes, but just realizing like, okay, I have to slow down and see my kid and just say to them, I see you. Like, you are so upset right now. I am sorry that you're feeling that way. Is there anything I can do to help?
Mm.
And with Jace, that what has happened is when I've started saying it that way, like, hey, I want you to know I do respect your feelings, but you do need to brush your teeth. Is there something I can do to help you right now? He has said, like, could you just help me brush them tonight? I'm just so tired. And that, I'm like, sure, I don't mind sometimes, like, open them out, like, I'll do it. Other times he's like, no, I just need a minute to calm down. Or sometimes if he's really lost it, he just yells louder. And so I'll sit in there with him and just rub his back, a minute. And often those are the days that it's about something different. And it might take a couple of days, and you might want to follow back up and say, hey, last night you were really upset about brushing your teeth. Do you know what was wrong? And they might be able to tell you this thing happened at school. They might say, I don't know, but be looking, maybe even check in, with teachers, check in with your spouse, and just try to understand like what might be in that emotion backpack that they've been carrying around that is now coming out in this moment.
Yeah, my niece likes to change the subject when I bring up something from earlier.
Yeah.
So I know kids have different ways that, you mentioned honor and shame and just dealing with that themselves. What about for kids who tell parents directly? Maybe this is an older child who says, you need to change your parenting style. How do you respond to that? Given that, kids might not always know what's best for them too.
Well, I think that our kids know more than we give them credit for. I will tell you, as a child, I did say this to my mom, and I feel kind of bad about it now. I think she had her hands full, because I think I was a very precocious little 7-year-old, and I was incredibly smart. And God gave me Jace, who is that exact same way. And sometimes I just feel like he outsmarts me as a parent. And I'm like, oh man, I really gave my mom a run for her money. But I did tell her, I remember saying to her, like, I need you to like try harder. Like, this isn't okay. Like, I don't like this. Like, you don't listen. Like, I don't think I would never parent my kid this way. It's something I remember saying to her when I was really little. And I wish she would have listened to me. Like, what I think would have felt really great is for her to say, like, wow, you must be really like upset to be saying this to me right now. What's going on? Am I hurting you? Like, why is this coming up? And really try to get underneath there, because I don't think our kids are going to say, you should let me have candy after bed. Like, it's not fair. Or there might be a rule that they want to talk about, but that's different than a parenting style, right? I've heard kids say in the counseling office, if it were me and I saw my kid crying like that, or anyone crying like that, I would want to help them. Why does my parent not want to help me? They just want me to do what they want. And so I think often our kids have more insight than we realize, and they may be using really disrespectful, terrible words to tell you. But if you can try to help them communicate underneath that anger and understand like what is there, the kids have less power than adults. And so sometimes the only way they can get themselves heard or get their needs met is to come off angry and disrespectful, because that could be a sign that they don't have enough power in the home. If they're angry like that a lot, that they need more, they need to be listened to and understood a little bit more. They might need more emotional support than what we're giving them. And so trying to understand that will always lead to better connection, and that can't go wrong. There was a time my kids thought that the bedtime was unfair. They wanted to stay up until 9 o'clock. They were like 10 and 7. And I was like, there's no way I'm letting you stay up till 9 o'clock because that means I have to stay up later and I'm tired. So I didn't say that. We ended up doing Rochambeau, and we compromised like, hey, if you guys win Rochambeau, you can stay up till 8:30. If we win Rochambeau, bedtime stays the same. And they were totally in. And so it was something that I was willing to compromise on. I wasn't giving a choice that I would be mad at later, like I didn't say 9 o'clock, but it was a way that I could say, I hear you, and let's make this fun. Because again, that's one of our values. And so we Rochambeaued and the kids won. And so they got to push their bedtime back to 8:30. So parenting style and rules are different, but really digging in to let the kids have some more autonomy, more say so in the family is actually going to pay off for you in the long run.
Yeah, and that may feel scary to some of us, to let them have that autonomy. I know it scares us as teachers even, so I know for parents that may be especially daunting, especially as the kids get a little bit older and gain their own independence as you're learning with your middle schoolers. Last question here, Sarah, as far as reinforcing family values, because we know we can put things down on paper, put it on the fridge, make it look all nice, but how does it go from just being an exercise that we do together and it looks great, but we're not necessarily, how do we reinforce that? How do we keep that going?
I think you should ask your kids this and put this on them for one thing and see what they say. I think they would have some really cool ideas. In our family, what we did when they were little is we had a jar on our kitchen counter and we had marbles. And so every time I saw them doing something on our family values list or family rules, I would put a marble in the jar. And I was super generous because they loved filling up the marble jar and like, oh my gosh, you did your chores without me asking. How responsible of you. You get 10 marbles, and like really reinforcing like that this is something great and this is something good. And then we all agreed on what the reward would be when the marble jar was filled up. So maybe we would go do a family picnic at the park. We might have a beach day. They get to choose, right? Like I would give them options. And this is one way you can do autonomy is by giving choices and they get to choose which one. So like my son is always like, I want candy. And that's like, I swear to you, this child will live off of candy forever. I feel like my girls just came out more responsible and he is just like the wild man rule breaker. But for him, like, okay, you cannot have candy every day. But I'll tell you what, like if you do these things, like then yeah, once a week, let's have a treat as a family. Like, let's do that. So finding ways that are exciting to them, of getting them involved and how to reinforce it. But this marble jar really worked. We kept using it up until maybe like last year. And we kind of grew out of it and we don't really need it anymore. That reinforcement at this point, they have reinforcement because they've built so much trust with us that they have things like phones and tablets that they're able to use. And we let them like run to the neighbor's house and we've really built a culture of trust to where I think that we can openly talk and confront the issues as they come. So, but yeah, I think get your family involved, get creative. What will work for you guys?
Yeah, having them take ownership. And I know there's marble jars that are in classrooms for us at our school, and that is a great motivator. And just ask one of our teachers, they know how that works, and you can implement that in your home as well, as Sarah mentioned. And one thing, I know, Sarah, you would encourage this with your parents as well, as you think about team. You parents are the leaders in your homes, and it takes a lot of modeling and understanding that as you keep your family values at the front and center of everything, that you have to sort of always go back to it. And that's just something I'm reminded of because we have a set of school values, and every time we talk to our kids when they've made bad choices during the school day, it just goes back to our 4 values of grace, integrity, love, and respect. And how have you not displayed those, or what were ways at which you could have made a choice to better embody some of those values? And it just is an anchor, as you showed those examples, Sarah, and it just helps to frame that discussion a little bit better. So it takes a little bit of practice. I'm sure you would agree with that, Sarah, too.
Yeah. And what's interesting is so one of the things my doctor and I agreed on the other day, was that we never fought with our kids like we started doing once our kids hit like this middle school, like 11 years old. All of a sudden, even my daughters were like, Mom, we've never fought before, really. And now we're having these emotional fights. And we're like, what are we going to do? And I felt that too. And so, really being able to talk through and get back on the same page in every stage, right? Like, okay, you guys, this is our new challenge. I've never been a mom of 12-year-old twins before. This is my very first time. So I might get it wrong, right? Let's work together. Let's pray for each other. Let's pray together. Let's invite God to teach us as we grow and to really just kind of engage that humility, that humor, that there is honor in that, right? Like in being that model, because we have rules, we have boundaries. We're not just being permissive. I don't mean just me and my family. I mean, we want to have those rules, and we're setting that tone with our kids, like that the structure and the order is important, right? But how we do that is something that we want everyone to buy into.
Yeah. And I want to stress families, that you're not alone.
Right.
That it takes, I know you're in your individual literal homes right now, but you're a part of a greater community of different families. And we want you to know that there's support there. And, I'll ask Sarah for any additional resources that you can lean into yourselves that will help you build that team that you desire within your home. I know a lot of us, when we talked about family of origin, many of us come from a different cultural background. So that has a definitely a variable in all of that as well, and how you see and develop your values and impart them on your children. And so that's something to consider as well. And I also want us to be reminded that part of tonight was also put together by our Parent Teacher League, our PTL, who believe in families and families coming together, particularly for the good of our children. And so I want to thank them for their support tonight as well, because they see it as important to be able to have opportunities like this for our families to hear and to learn and to grow and to be able to do that together. And so we're appreciative of the PTL, also appreciative, of course, of Sarah for returning to us tonight. We will send out the recording link later. If there are additional questions that you think of later on, you can send them to me and I can message Sarah to see if she has any thoughts on that, but we'll also share resources, including tonight's slides as well. Thank you, parents, again for joining us for this evening, and we look forward to further discussions in the future on community and collaboration together. Thank you and have a good evening.